Hey everybody, Ben here from Cinderblock Studios, and there's a lot of stuff behind me all the time in these videos, and I don't think I've ever really kind of talked about them. A couple of years ago I built the studio and filled it with stuff, and yeah, I never really kind of gave you guys a good tour of the back wall, so stick around, we're doing that today. So I think it was about a year ago that I was recording one of the How to Be an Artist parts, and I recorded that segment talking about building an inspiring workplace, someplace that when you come to work, you kind of have all kind of ideas like ready to go at your fingertips in addition to all of your art supplies. And some of you guys will know the paint shelf behind me, but let's actually take a bit wider of a tour of some of the stuff I've got here. So despite being in this place for a little over 2 years now, this wall was supposed to be a corkboard wall, and that's still kind of a plan at some point. I actually still have written in chalk up here, cork wall, from 2 years ago when I wrote that, because tape does not stick to these bricks super well. I found that out very fast, and I'm always kind of rotating things because the tape's always falling off. So the first thing I've got up here is a relatively new addition. This is just a color map of my set of watercolors that I have. I've slowly built up a large number of tubes of watercolors. I think there's maybe 12 or 13 colors here. And I was like, you know what, I haven't really done a good big color map of them before. And one Saturday, instead of painting something more complex, I decided to just do a big color map. Below that is this sign. No matter where you are from, we are glad you're a neighbor. This is actually basically a Creative Commons sign that you can get and make your own signs of and put them wherever you want. The place that created this down here, facebook.com/welcomeyourneighbors, that you can do whatever you want with it. This is actually designed as a yard sign. It has a stake you can stick in the front of your yard, but I find that to be really kind of tacky. I also live at the end of a dead-end street, so I figured, well, let's put it in the background of videos because a lot more people are going to see it here than actually out in my front yard. Next to the sign, on top of the door, I have a whole bunch of stuff. First up is a printout cutout of actually the old Heinz Ketchup Factory, which is here in Pittsburgh. I wanted to do it grab it for a mixed media project at some point, but I never really got around to it, so it just kind of lives up here. These are sort of my custom rune shapes, which I did this in order to scan it and turn it into a set of custom Photoshop brushes for a concept. Those custom Photoshop brushes, if you support me on Patreon, you can get access to those. Acrylic color values, this was my color theory exercises video, the first one I did. I did this. This has been up here ever since just because it's actually a really good reference. We've got a picture of a lighthouse. I don't remember which one, but it's on the Outer Banks of North Carolina. My parents took this photo when I was like 17, I think. And I did a painting of it when I was like around that time, 16, 17. And I meant to do another one, and because the original one actually got basically destroyed in down here when the basement flooded last year. And I wanted to do a new one anyway, and so that's been there ever since. There's actually a second one down here on the middle shelf. We'll get to that in a minute. Up here I have a reference image from, this is ESBNLASH on DeviantArt. The piece title was called Mother Box. This is just a black and white printout of this piece. I found it really inspiring, so I grabbed it and printed that out just to kind of have, and I played with it in my sketchbook here and there, doing some studies and stuff out of that. Same thing with these. These are like little, I can't remember if it was the same artist or not. I don't think it was, but they're basically like terrarium robots. I played around with some when I was doing mech studies and stuff like that. I was doing studies with them. This is just a little color wheel I did with just paint on my finger. I was bored one day, just kind of went all the way around and blended that out. Below the mother box is a sort of a resketch out of an old thing that was in my regular sketchbook. It was the Lonely Cyclops monster. I thought it was a really fun little thing. I still happen to hold on to it. There's actually one of my regular little guys in the corner here just to scale him up. Now when I get a new color, I do basically a little color map for it. So when I added cobalt blue to my palette, one of them is the pure, and then roughly 50-50 mixes for all of them, so I can kind of figure out what they are. Down to the middle, we can see that other lighthouse. This is actually just sort of a color swatch of some indigo blue watercolor. There's a whole lot more of these color maps down here, sap green hue. And once I kind of have them, like before I even played with the color, this just really helps me kind of visualize it and figure out how I'm going to use it, so that's usually why these are up on display. Also, sometimes you can just forget about what good color mixes are because you don't use them a ton. Especially this sap green and the quinacridone magenta, that's a really nice dark. Not one I use a whole hell of a lot, but I will lean on from time to time. Oh yeah, that's right, that makes that color. This, which I kind of overlooked just a minute ago, I'm going to move this down then, is the sort of wrapping that was around an ampersand artist panel. I tend to forget about these because my local Blix doesn't have any of these in store. I have to get them online. So I kind of remind myself to pick one of these up every, maybe once a year or something like that, because they're really great to paint on. I did a video a while back called Why Big Projects Are Important, and then I did this color wheel out of gouache while I was talking in that video. That's here. This is my only color wheel for gouache, so it was, ended up being a useful thing to display. And then right below that I have a Kirby-style character drawing. It was Burnin' Leo was the name of the character from the game Kirby Superstar and a couple others. When I was still experimenting more with time-lapse stuff, I wanted to do this. I did it as a carbon back, and I did a sort of like a wood-burning version. So it was a wood-burning time-lapse drawing. Did not turn out well, so I've kept it because I've been wanting to try it again, but the initial video never got released just because it turned out really terrible. Alright, the last set of couple here at the bottom, I've got, this became the thumbnail for Mass Tone versus Glaze, so I did that basically just for the thumbnail of that video, but I may or may not have shown that on camera just as a still. More color mixing charts. Terra Vert, I just added this color to my palette like 2 weeks ago. Haven't really painted with it yet because I'm still trying to use up the Viridian that I have, which is this old one. So that got removed from the wall because I'm not really going to need it now since I'm switching greens. Micaceous iron oxide. This is the inside of a Canson paper pad. They list all of their different, or at least some of their different types of paper, along with mediums and what they're kind of best with. This is a great piece of reference, and I'm occasionally pulling on this for video ideas and stuff like that too. And then just small to another color mixing chart down the bottom. On the doorknob itself, I have a couple of bags. I have a Liquitex bag, which they sent me for free, which was lovely, actually. Hey, sunscreen! I was looking for that. Also have a couple of bags, a Crown Royal bag. And this bag's just full of all kind of like clips and stuff, because you never know when you need clips. Now this stuff gets a little bit more interesting once we pass the door. This is a painting-ish. This is an actual leaf that I decided to basically glaze over top of for a piece. Didn't really work. This leaf actually was green initially. I was hoping to kind of like preserve it the same way you kind of do with a book, but for some reason the air was still able to kind of get through to it, which is really unfortunate. So it turned brown eventually. It just kind of hangs out up here as a remnant idea of something to maybe revisit someday. This painting is actually the first painting I ever did when I was 10 years old. Still the same set that I started with and everything like that. Really fun to work on. When I did, I think I did a revisit of it in 2014. But my mom has that painting. I don't have it here. A couple more color tests: red iron oxide, titanium buff. This is all supply stuff. These are the pencils I got from my late friend Jim. I've got oils in here. This is another thing of his, a lot of utility thing, glazing points, the vintage pencils are all down there. This was my first attempt at paint pouring. I was gifted some pouring medium, and I was like, well, let's give it a shot. So I did, and it's kind of a mess, but I learned a lot doing it. I don't know if I would want to do paint pouring on a regular basis. My problem with paint pouring is just that it's like, I could get it to move, and then it moves, and I'm like, okay, stop moving, but I can't get it to stop moving. It's just going to keep flowing and flowing, and I don't like that at all. I would like to get it to a point and say, okay, stop, but that's not what happens. There's all kind of weird stuff in here. Sand block, my block print from like 10 years ago that I really should do another edition run of those. All kind of just junk and stuff in here. Paper little test experiment paintings and stuff like that. Nothing too crazy. I've got a color map for my high flow acrylics, which I think I may have added a color since I did this, but that's that. This is a newspaper article that was written about a artist choice exhibition that I was in a couple of years ago, and one of my paintings got featured in the article, and I got quoted, and it was really fun. So that hangs out down here as well. On this side, you can't see it, but I have all kind of different notes to myself, and that's what's really covered in this whole shelf. We're going to get to more of that in a second here. I have artistic music video, mixing drinks up close with zoom filters. Sure. Oh, I don't want to give that one away because that's a fun April Fool's idea for probably isn't as funny anymore. But I have a short film sketch idea with taking two iPhones and an iPad and being like a defibrillator, and it's like the old there's an app for that thing when the App Store first launched. So it's like you can run up to someone with two iPhones and go tss, clear, and you have like the EKG going on the iPad. But yeah, there's all kind of weird little notes like that to myself all over this thing. So yeah, paint shelf, paint, and high flows and inks, and you guys got the studio tour, but it's again all these little things that go all around it. I've got an old puppet I made in high school for this project. He lives up here. I did these clay heads in college. I actually did a revisit of it. If you search clay heads on the channel, you're going to find this guy that I made out of an air dry clay, but all of the rest of them are polymer clay. I basically wanted to see if the technique between the polymer clay and the air dry clay would translate, and actually it did quite well. I miss doing them. They're really fun little comical shapes and things like that, but not a huge market for all those guys. There's a big hunk of coal up here, tripod, things like that. And then again, all kind of notes to myself. I have something in quotes here, something worth protecting. That's sort of a story idea element thing. I have note says frozen fall. It says blue-green shades, snow, quin magenta shadows. Those are just piece ideas. These are notes about fine pumice gel that a friend of mine wrote up for me. I have an idea for a large PDF, which is just a art vocabulary super pack that I've been meaning to make for like 3 years. I have an idea for a blog post called Why Do We Love Raw Untapped Creativity? Another random name idea down here. It says Dream Incubator. This side of the shelf, very similar. I've actually got passwords for stuff sitting in here too. I had the real mistakes acrylic painters make, which I decided not to do. I spun that around. I took a high road like 2 years ago when I made that. There's still some video ideas worth kind of getting into here. I have a thing that was sourced from a Chris Oatley art cast from like 3 or 4 years ago called Observing Imaginatively. That's a video for some point when I feel like actually hammering that one out. Poetic video, text on screen, sort of like a CGP grade kind of thing, called Why Painting Matters. This is late year color theory. This was, I think, 2 years ago, which I never got around to it. A series of digital landscapes, concept sketches featuring different main colors, color and mood, atmospheric perspective, that kind of stuff. Haven't gotten to that yet. I don't think I've done the everything you need to know about mixed media yet either. That's still sitting here. This was another printout of a snippet of a digital piece. I think I did a sketch of this at some point. This is a scan of my own sketchbooks for some Kingdom of the Wind stuff. This I keep looking at lately. This says shadow landscapes on it. I wrote this a while ago. The idea behind it is the same way shadow puppets work and kind of hand shapes and things, but doing that with different layers and stuff and then shining a light and getting it to look like a silhouette landscape.
through various objects, and that's an idea I really kind of keep wanting to go back to as like a photography project. Stuff up top, once we pass the clay heads, the clock is actually is a 6th grade shop project. Everyone from like my school district made one, so it's like these clocks are everywhere in my old home school district. A couple of small elephants. I can't remember where these came from or why. I do keep a crucifix down here in the studio. I keep one in my bedroom. I keep one down here. It's a nice gentle reminder to myself to, why I, really do work on paintings and stuff. But I'll leave that for another day. This is compressed, sort of compressed clay dirt that I wanted to try and refine and turn into a piece of clay, which didn't work. But I basically sifted it through a coffee filter and refined it down to this. But it's really crumbly, so I don't know what to do with that. I have an old microphone up here, old time cards from a job I haven't worked in 3 years. This was a fun project that I tweeted about, but I didn't really kind of talk about on the channel. So a couple of years ago on the channel Tested, or Tested.com, I guess it is, they did a project with makeup artist and I guess prop designer Frank Ippolito, where they took a plastic skull and basically sculpted on top of it to make a horror skull prop. And I was like, let's try this. I didn't have the liquid latex, but I had Mod Podge, and so I made this, and I'm really, really proud of this. I did this last October-ish. It sat on my table during the week of Halloween. It's pretty dang creepy. I'll give it that. But it was really, really, really fun to work on. Looks like a nice burnt, charred skull, and this was just a plastic skull on Amazon that I just played. It was layers of cotton, Mod Podge, and then acrylic paint on top of it. Really, really fun to work on this thing. I gave this to a friend of mine to hold a while back, and he was like, held on it for about 30 seconds, and he was like, okay, this is really creepy, get this thing away from me. I'm like, hey, thanks. But I really, since doing that and knowing that it worked, I really want to do an arm this year and hang it out of my mailbox. So that's a look at the stuff on the wall and sort of around the wall behind me. There's a lot of stuff here, a lot of stuff that I haven't touched in a long time, a lot of video ideas that I haven't looked at, and now that I've kind of gone over them myself, I'm like, maybe I should get around to doing those. So if you enjoyed this little tour of the extra stuff behind me, go ahead and hit that like button. If you saw something that I didn't mention and you want to say, hey, what was that thing at whatever time, let me know in comments below. And this has been from Cinderblock Studios. Subscribe for more. Consider supporting on Patreon. All that other stuff. Instagram, Facebook, my own website. Check that stuff out, and I will see you guys next time.